able to communicate with these first responders who are helping rescue him. What are your thoughts?
Well, that's the most important thing, is the fact that these injuries, although serious, were non-life-threatening. We'll talk about a comeback later, but more importantly, we wanted to make sure that Tiger was going to be with us, because there was a lot of concern when we saw the visuals and heard about the severity of this accident, that we didn't know how life-threatening this accident was. But now that we are hearing that it is not life-threatening, it's a positive not only for us in the golf media, but also for the players out here where I am in Bradenton, Florida, getting ready for the Workday Championship here on the PGA Tour.
Todd, how are those players reacting? I know when we spoke with you earlier this morning, you were saying that word was just reaching them that Tiger had been involved in this crash. What's the mood now?
Concerned, but optimistic. I would say I've talked to a number of players, including some Southern California players. Colin Morikawa, who is the reigning PGA champion.
Yeah.
If you remember last year, he won at TPC Harding Park. He grew up in Los Angeles. He's told me several times that Tiger was his idol. It was the reason that he got into the game of golf and chased it at the level that he's at right now. He was very concerned, shaken, I would say. But once he did hear that although the injuries are serious, they are non-life-threatening, there was a bit of relief. And he did tell me, he said, if there's anybody that can come back from this, it is Tiger Woods. That's how much belief and admiration he has for him.
And Todd, I want to share something with you and our viewers right now. I'm not sure if you already saw it, Todd. It came out just a few minutes ago. But Jack Nicklaus, oftentimes people refer to, they have that debate. Who's the greatest golfer of all time? Is it Tiger Woods? Is it Jack Nicklaus? Regardless, Jack Nicklaus tweeting, Barbara and I just heard about Tiger's accident. Like everyone else, we are deeply concerned. We want to offer him our heartfelt support and prayers at this difficult time. Please join us in wishing Tiger a successful surgery and all the best for a full recovery. Todd, can you talk to us a little bit about the relationship between these two?
It's one of great respect, no doubt about it. I mean, you probably know, and those who follow golf know, that Tiger, when he was growing up in Southern California, had a poster of Jack Nicklaus on his wall in his bedroom, because that was his inspiration to beat Jack Nicklaus's major championship record of 18 majors. Doesn't look like he's going to do that, but he does have 15. But it's someone that he's always admired. Tiger's felt that Jack Nicklaus was the gold standard when it comes to great championship golf, and he wanted to be like him, and he wanted to be greater than him, actually. And Jack, after he walked away from the game, he saw that Tiger was playing at a different level, a level that he is only familiar with. And so there's great respect and admiration for both. I had an opportunity just last year to sit down with both of them and talk golf in front of an audience. And Jack was excited to do this because he had never sat down and talked golf in front of an audience with Tiger. And I mean, as you guys, you're journalists and you're informers, and to sit down with the two greatest players ever, in my opinion, and to have them go back and forth and talk about stuff like, hey, Tiger, what aspect of Jack's game do you wish that you had, and vice versa. I mean, to do that was just a thrill for me, and it was a thrill for Jack and a thrill for Tiger as well.
Yeah, we're hearing from, sports greats across the sporting world. Magic Johnson tweeting, everyone send your prayers out to Tiger Woods. He was just in a bad car accident. Let us all pray for his speedy recovery. Michael Phelps tweeting, praying for Tiger Woods. Alex Rodriguez praying for my brother Tiger Woods as we anxiously await more news, thinking of him and his entire family. I mean, this touches everyone really on a global level, and I think so many people are so concerned about his children right now as well, Todd.
Yeah, and there's no doubt about it that it's easy for us. It's human nature for us to assume the worst. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I've heard players say to me, will Tiger play again? Will he be able to enjoy life to the fullest, which he has been able to do, it seems like, especially over the last few years after having that spinal fusion surgery. But there's one thing to think about in regards to this. And I mentioned this earlier when we talked, that when Tiger was at a very low point, 4 or 5 years ago, because of his back issues, where he didn't have a functional life with his family. He was very down and depressed about that and thought he may never play competitive golf again. But after that surgery, he proved to us, and more importantly to himself, that he can recover from adversity physically and fight through this and get the life that he wants. Let's hope that's the case now, and that he has that optimism. We, again, are waiting the severity of these injuries, but if they are something that he can overcome, I feel like he feels like he can do that. So that's just obviously what we're going to have to wait and see.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, that mental strength that we've seen from him. And of course, when he won, the Masters just 3 years ago, I think that was top on everyone's mind. Like, I think a lot of people were wondering, could he ever come back to the level that he did? And we sure watched it happen.
Yeah, it's interesting. In 2019, when he won the Masters, and last year, albeit in November, not April, when he returned as the defending champion, I had a chance to talk to him. And the great appreciation that he has for being a champion again, a major champion at Augusta National, was just overwhelming. I mean, that smile, that electric smile that we have seen over the years, was he had it in full volume around Augusta National, because he really did, again, appreciate the fact that he not only is a returning champion, but was able to win and, again, defy even his own odds to do so. So, He's a battler. He's tough. And as I said earlier, if there's one person that I would never doubt again, it is Tiger Woods and coming back. And let's hope that this is something that he can physically overcome, and there's a positive outlook after we get some more information.
And Todd, what is it, do you think, that makes Tiger Woods so transcendent of a golfer? It's kind of like people who weren't into golf before Tiger Woods started watching golf because of him. You're seeing all these reactions on social media from celebrities and other athletes who play different sports, all weighing in their thoughts and prayers. Obviously, he's had a tremendous impact on the tour itself. But what do you think it is that draws so many people to Tiger Woods? They want to watch what he does on a golf course.
Because he crossed over into a new level and urbanized golf. Inner city kids now, instead of thinking of basketball and baseball when Tiger was at his prime and when he was dominant, and even now, I told you the story about Colin Morikawa, but those inner city kids, they weren't necessarily always thinking about basketball and football. They were saying, hey, I want to be like Tiger, maybe playing golf. And there was a time when you could easily make the argument that he was not only the most recognizable athlete on the planet, but maybe the most recognizable person on the planet.
Yeah.
He's relatable. Obviously, he has incredible talent. So he's an icon.
We've spoken a lot today about the impact, his foundation has had, celebrating 25 years. And this was something that was critically important to him to establish and to give back. And this was one thing that you could always count on Tiger wanting to talk about.
Yeah, and, look, he said to me a couple of times now, this TGR Foundation that he has developed over the years, helping kids get into college who, may not have had opportunities to do so, and watching those kids succeed and do some great things in life, that's his greatest accomplishment. And that's a lot coming from the guy who's done what he's done. Hey, I apologize, I have to run, but it's great spending time with you. We'll keep you updated.
Thank you,
guys
Todd.
do a wonderful job.
Thank you for your
appreciate it,
insight.
Todd.
Todd Lewis with the Golf Channel there. Carolyn providing tremendous insight. I mean, just sharing how he's able to do a sit-down interview with Tiger Woods and Jack Nicklaus, the two greatest golfers of all time, just a short time ago, and how much Tiger has meant not only to the golfing world, but to the sports world, and how recognizable he is and was at his peak.
It was interesting, you brought up the Jack Nicklaus tweet, and to hear him talk about the relationship they had and the incredible respect they each had for the other. And just to share the tweet that you mentioned just a short time ago, again, in case our viewers might have missed it, this from Jack Nicklaus. Barbara and I just heard about Tiger's accident, and like everyone else, we are deeply concerned. We want to offer him our heartfelt support and prayers at this difficult time. Please join us in wishing Tiger a successful surgery and all the best for a full recovery.
And Carolyn, Todd talked about this during that short interview just a short time ago. He couldn't really play with his kids, and that was his main goal, was being able to, going through these back surgeries, he just wanted to be able to play soccer with his daughter and to pick up his son. And he said at its worst, I mean, he couldn't get out of bed. This is somebody who's undergone 5 back surgeries now, including, as we mentioned, spinal fusion surgery, which is as serious and complicated as it sounds. And now we're curious as to, how this collision, how this crash might have impacted, again, not only his legs, which we know now has suffered multiple injuries to both of his legs, but how is his back going to hold up? And will he be able to come back and perform at the elite level that we're used to seeing him perform at?
I think the thing that is causing great relief to so many is to hear that the injuries are not considered life-threatening, and that he was able to communicate with first responders when they arrived on scene. All very good signs. We're awaiting more information from LA County Sheriff Alex Villanueva in an hour. Right now, we have Megan Reyes over the scene for us, and they are making some progress as they move his vehicle off this embankment. Megan, it does look like they've dragged it a bit.
Yeah, Carolyn, they're making progress. They've secured the vehicle and almost to the point where they're going to upright it. But right now, what they're doing is clearing and retrieving any debris in the area. They've got a couple of flatbed tow trucks. So again, this is very routine. The only difference is now is this crash here involves a high-profile person, Tiger Woods. So that's why we're seeing this being done in a very meticulous manner. These individuals from the tow company are being very careful and extra precise to get all the debris here, and they're putting it on a tow truck. They've already cleaned up the street and retrieved all the debris from the street as well. And this is the last part of the investigation. They're going to put that vehicle onto a flatbed tow truck, and essentially, most likely, they're just going to lift it up from the tires and then bring it back onto the street and most likely just lay it flat on a tow truck here that's awaiting.
It is now 2 o'clock. We have been following this breaking news of a crash involving Tiger Woods that happened this morning at 7:12. Tiger was traveling northbound on Hawthorne Boulevard when it appears he lost control of this vehicle because he crossed over the center median and the southbound lanes and ended here on this embankment that our Megan Reyes is over for us right now. We know that the windshield was popped open in an effort to extricate Tiger from the vehicle, this vehicle landing here on the driver's side. We understand Tiger was able to communicate with first responders on the scene, who in turn requested ambulance transport for him. He was taken to Harbor UCLA Medical Center. His agent has let us know that Tiger suffered multiple leg injuries. He's undergoing surgery for those injuries to his legs right now. But we also know these injuries are described now as non-life-threatening. We're expecting a news conference with Sheriff Alex Villanueva in an hour, and we will, of course, bring you that when we have it live for you.
Right, and we also understand that there was a person who tried to help Tiger Woods, a witness to this scene, and that person ended up being involved in a minor collision of their own. But that person will certainly play a key and pivotal role in this investigation, as will Tiger Woods, once he's able to talk with investigators, if he's not done so already. I do want to talk with Nurse Alice. We're going to bring Nurse Alice in right now. Good to see you, Nurse Alice. We do want to ask you some questions about what we're hearing so far. The fact that Tiger was able to communicate with his rescuers, how critical and crucial is that in terms of his well-being?
That is extremely important. No 2 car accidents are ever the same, but the fact that, given what happened, jumping the divider, rolling several times, and, with airbags deploying and the visual damages that you can see the carts, the fact that responders were able to arrive and he was awake and speaking to them, conscious, following instructions, is very critical. That's a very good sign, and that they were able to respond to him. And but I have to say that this is a very delicate time. I know the accident happened earlier this morning. We have what's called the golden hour when it comes to trauma. That first hour of what is going on and how the patient is treated plays a very critical role. I'm glad to see that Tiger was transported to a level 1 trauma facility, UCLA Harbor. So they have all of the specialists on hand, ready to go. They were there to receive him. And so, but this next 24 hours is going to be very telling with what's going to happen with Tiger, because although we've been told about some leg injuries, given the nature of the rollover and how his car looked. There are some other injuries that can happen subsequent to the initial impact.
And certainly, Nurse Alice, one of the things that we've been talking a lot about is Tiger has had 5 back surgeries. He's just in a very he was rehabbing his most latest 5th surgery and was speaking about just about to have another MRI on that. So, of course, we're concerned about his spine at this point when you look at the devastating crash here.
Absolutely. So, with that many back surgeries, spinal fusions, or things that Tiger has going on, that's definitely put him a little bit behind the 8 ball with, how his body has been able to absorb and impact the shock of this rollover. So his spine probably wasn't as mobile as someone else, especially if he's had any type of fusions or things like that. So something that we definitely want to watch for. And I'm sure that the surgeons, the orthopedic surgeons, the neurosurgeons are watching that very closely. So the back is very important. But, the fact that his airbags deployed, just people can sustain injuries from just the airbags deploying themselves. The amount of pressure that is pushed onto the body, the rollover, we don't really know exactly what the full extent of his injuries will be. We're praying for the best for Tiger, but we do know that when rollover accidents like that, that the brain itself can rattle inside of the head. The amount of pressure that deployed into his face, his head, and his chest. So some other things that they'll be looking for and monitoring outside of his leg injuries, which are, he's in surgery, he's getting those taken care of. But we're going to want to keep a close eye on his heart and his lungs because there can be contusions and there's swelling and a lot of things that happen after that initial impact, like I said.
Thank you for that insight, Nurse Alice. It is so important that we keep that in mind, that the next few days are going to be extremely critical to see how Tiger recovers, not just from the leg injuries, but the potential of internal injuries. We do want to bring in Eric Leonard right now, investigative reporter Eric Leonard, who has more on the investigation. Eric, what do you have?
Well, one thing that's interesting about this, sort of an unfortunate benefit of the severity of the injuries, is that with the transport to the hospital, there is going to be blood work done. And so there's going to be no question on the part of the investigators about what factors the condition Tiger Woods was in might have played in this wreck. They're going to know. Outside of that, we've watched for the last few hours as they've done an intensive amount of documentation of this scene, taking a lot of measurements, some photographs, figuring out the relationship between whatever marks were left on the pavement, the broken sign, the license plate that we saw, and compare that with where the vehicle ended up. All of that can be put back together later and will give the investigators a really good understanding of how fast the car was going and at what point it began to turn to where it ended up. Also, obviously, they're going to be looking for video, not just video from inside the car, if there happens to be any. Sometimes cars have dashboard cameras, but also cars that were in the area passing by. I mean, for all we know, somebody driving a work truck that might have multiple cameras on it caught a glimpse of some piece of this happening, either right beforehand or as it was happening. Those can be really critical clues, as well as other drivers coming and going along the same stretch of road. They may have inadvertently captured a little piece of information that that detectives will want to look at, plus all of this, the home surveillance cameras, or I should say really call them security cameras, that might be pointed out towards the roadway and have caught a glimpse of something that might go a long way to explaining exactly what happened this morning. Lastly, they're going to also look at what is called an event recorder, but in a lot of higher-end cars, certainly newer, plot out on a graph or even in an animation exactly what was happening in the car right before it happened. So putting all of those things together, I imagine they're going to have a very clear picture. It's probably not going to be today. Complicated traffic collision investigations, as we're seeing being done here, usually take some time to put together, because not only is it a matter of collecting the information, it's also analyzing it. And certainly one of the key pieces of information is going to be talking to the driver, Tiger Woods. And given what we know about his condition so far, even though he was alert and talking, chances are that interview might not happen today.
Yeah, I would imagine it would not. As we look more about this car, which is the GV80, it's the Genesis, and it is fully loaded. I mean, this was the car that was the courtesy car for the tournament that Tiger was hosting this weekend at the Riviera Golf Club. And, you know, hopefully, as you described, Eric, there are a lot of bells and whistles on this vehicle that investigators will be able to glean information from directly from the car itself.
That's right. I mean, the more sophisticated the car, the more possibilities there are for different types of recording. There are a few cars on the market that have what are sometimes described as 360-degree cameras. And that's so if you're trying to parallel park or fit in between some other spaces, you can flick them on, and the cameras, using a computer, piece together what would be a 360-degree view outside of the car. And I'm not sure if those get recorded on those event recorders. There are a few models that do, and certainly that kind of video imagery would be an extraordinary clue for investigators. But my understanding is from crash investigators that it is rare to come across even a modern vehicle that has that level of sophistication. But the data recorder is really important, and those are much, much more common these days.
And this is such a complex crash scene, Eric, as we take a live look at this crane. It's now uprighted Tiger's vehicle, but you can see the damage sustained to the front end, to the driver's side window, to the windshield that had to be popped, to the back end, the back tire area right there. Eric, we have a news conference coming up at 3 o'clock in which we're going to be able to speak with the Sheriff's Department. What are some of the questions that you would like answered?
Well, I think one of the interesting areas to explore, and I imagine the officials from both the Sheriff's Department and LA County Fire are going to be forthright about this. I mean, there's not some deep layer of information we're trying to get at. But first is always the timeline. How much time elapsed between the crash itself and when people got on scene there to help out? If it's Tiger Woods driving and he's the one that was most severely injured in the wreck, it's possible he might not have been able to make that initial call for help. And if that's the case, I wonder if they've been able to piece together exactly when this wreck happened versus when they got that 911 call. We're assuming it all happened in very short order, but it's possible there could have been a longer period of time here. Also, once the emergency people got on scene there, how long did it take to get him out? You heard the nurse talking about that golden hour where it's just absolutely critical to get somebody to that initial level of treatment, especially in trauma, within that first hour. And not that anyone has any idea that anyone did anything wrong here, but it would be interesting to know how much time elapsed between the wreck itself, the first calls for help, when people got on scene, and how efficiently they were able to get him to a trauma center. We were looking back through the LA County Fire Department's records of this morning, and our best sense, and timestamps can be off, so this is just preliminary, is that after the Sheriff's Department got on scene, there was a bit of a lapse of time before firefighters got on scene, and once they got there, there was about 10 minutes where they were working to get him out of the car. It sounds like it was a fairly straightforward process to get him out. The log of the call, which doesn't capture all the detail, just some general ideas of what happened, doesn't mention any kind of a prolonged rescue effort. So whatever they did was pretty straightforward, pretty quick. That's all good news. That means he gets to the emergency room faster, which is, of course, their goal. But in answer to your question, my question is how much do they know about the timeline here? And is it possible that Tiger Woods was stuck in this wreck for some period of time before anyone was able to call for help? That's really what I'd be curious about.
And I would imagine, Eric, that someone was able to call for help pretty soon after, since the cars, we are told, were stopped at the side. someone had stopped apparently trying to help when that car was rear-ended. That ended up being a minor accident, but indeed, likely the phone calls began to first responders for help. We want to go to John Cadiz-Klimac. He is on scene on the ground for us right now as we continue to watch News Chopper 4 Alpha's view of this as the car is extricated from where it landed. But we want to check in with John now, who is near the scene of the crash for us. John.
Yeah, we're just a little bit south of it. I want to kind of lay the groundscape for you so you understand where we are. I'm covering my ear because I can actually hear News Chopper 4 overhead. We're at the intersection of Black Horse and Hawthorne Boulevard. If you look in the direction of where we're pointing now, this is southbound. So it's actually going uphill to go southbound on Hawthorne. The belief is that Tiger was traveling northbound, so headed downhill. And as we were speaking with some neighbors in the area, they say that they're not surprised as to the end result of what happened here because of just how steep it is. And once you head down this way and you go around that curve, that's really the last curve there, they say if you don't know the area well enough, it can be very dangerous because, as we saw what happened with Mr. Tiger Woods, they're concerned that could happen to a lot of different people if they're not from the area. They do say that they regularly see cars that have kind of gone off to the edge at least every couple weeks because of that situation. But speaking with these neighbors here today, they've been concerned about what's happened down here and obviously concerned about Mr. Tiger Woods as well. Some of the folks who have come out, we've noticed a lot of people coming to try to take pictures. Of course, it's closed off. You can't really get close to the scene itself. But some of the people come out say they're not golf fans per se, but they love their area here in this neighborhood and they wanted to come out and see. We did speak with one man who told us that he's a big Tiger Woods fan and that his heart is broken over what's happened and sending his prayers to Mr. Woods in the hospital. Guys, I want to send it back to you. We're going to be staying out here to wait, as I understand that there's a tow truck that's on its way out here that's going to be pulling the vehicle out from that area any minute now. And, of course, we're still waiting on word from the Sheriff's Department for their press conference coming up at 3 o'clock, guys.
Okay, thank you, John, for that. Williams is joining us now. Adrian Arambulo. I'm Carolyn Johnson, been with you all morning with Adrian. But Adrian, who did the morning news for us, is headed home, and Colleen joins us now. We also have Gil Levis in News Chopper 4 Bravo overhead as we make that transition as well. Gil, are you with us?
You know, Carolyn, as we continue to look at the car being moved out of the area, I'm not sure. Can you hear Gil at all?
Not yet, Colleen, but I think perhaps we're just getting all that into place.
If we still have John on the ground there, the one thing that's confusing, if you're watching this coverage from home, and my husband and I were watching it in the beginning before I started to get ready to come in, is did he roll down a hill or did he cross over, hit a pole, and then flip the car? So it's kind of confusing to figure out exactly what happened.
It's the latter, Colleen, I can tell you that. He crossed over from the northbound lanes through the center median, went through the southbound lanes, and ended up there on the embankment. And if we have, Gil, can you hear me now? If it's possible for you to tilt up and give us a wider shot, you can really get a sense of the curve in this road if Gil is able to kind of pull out for us, because you can see there's sort of a bit of an S curve to Hawthorne Boulevard here. And as you tilt up, you can see that bend in the road. And this is something that neighbors in the area have talked to us about. There you can really see that S more, that cars do tend to travel pick up speed going downhill as they're traveling northbound. We had one neighbor tell us that a very similar accident happened just a short time ago with a driver also heading northbound on these lanes, crossing that center divide, crossing the southbound lanes, and ending up on the embankment where we see the vehicle that Tiger was driving. And Gil, are you back with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Oh, we can, yes.
Oh, great. Okay, we had a little bit of trouble there with our audio, but yeah, you're exactly right. You see that curve there, and it comes down. He was traveling on the Hawthorne Boulevard here on the left side of the screen. That, I mean, as I zoom in here, that lane there is the northbound side of Hawthorne Boulevard, and as he came through that curve, it kind of flattens out a little bit, and you'll see that center divider right here where the impact happened. Now, as we can see, as I come further down on the southbound side of the lanes, you see debris. I'm going to have my pilot slide to the left so we can see a little bit better, a clearer shot of where the car was going and traveling when it crashed. crash. But here's where it entered that shoulder of the road, and you see how it just split right through the trees here and ended up right in that spot there. Right now, the tow truck or the heavy lift vehicle is lifting the vehicle out of that spot right now and is now actually onto the southbound lanes of Hawthorne Boulevard. But you can see that path that the car traveled, a very great distance. In fact, I'll come out to a wider shot so you can see once again, there's the center median where it crossed over and slid all this way onto the dirt, through the trees, and ending up in that clearing there. And now the car is now onto Hawthorne Boulevard.
How far is that closed, Gil? We heard it was closed in the area of the accident. Are you talking a couple miles here, a mile, a couple of blocks?
I would say it's at least a mile. It's stretching from Black Horse Road all the way to Palos Verdes Drive north. So it is a big distance there, at least a mile, maybe a little bit more.
And Gil, we are seeing they've made some progress as they've tried to move the vehicle off the embankment here and onto this, I guess, tow truck. I'm not quite sure if that's what I'm looking at, or is that still the crane that they use to move the vehicle? Yeah,
that's it right there. And let me come in a little tighter so you can see they've actually set it down on the fast lane there of the road. That's the southbound side. There it is. They've set it down there, and they have a tow truck at the weight here ahead of it, right there, a flatbed that they're going to bring in and put it on there.
And are you able to get a better sense now that it's upright as to the damage?
Yeah, let me push in here. In fact, we're going to try to slide in closer to it. I can ask my pilot to move forward. Here you can see all the damage on the back side of it, and it looks like the engine compartment has been pushed in quite a bit.
Well, but Colleen, I have to say, when you look at this, I mean, considering it rolled multiple times, the vehicle is held up remarkably well.
You know, it is interesting to look at the vehicle because really from the cabin back, it looks like there's not a whole lot of damage. But when you see the car resting on its side, and keep in mind it was resting on the driver's side, so when they got him out, they had to pull him through the windshield or through the passenger side. I believe it was the windshield. You look, the front end of the car appears to have a lot of damage.
Yeah, indeed it does.
Gil, are you still with us?
I am still here. It looks like the windshield, I believe they said they tried to extricate Tiger out of the windshield area. They did use the jaws of life, so there was going to be some damage to the car from that. But as you're saying, yes, you can see the extent of the damage there, especially at the front end.
Yeah, one point of clarification, we initially were told jaws of life. We later heard that they just had to pop the windshield in order to get him out. But as Colleen mentioned, the car was resting on the driver's side, so, you know, that perhaps was a bit more complicated. We do know this is the GV80. It's a brand new Genesis model that has 10 airbags on board. It appears many of them were deployed, as you would expect in a rollover crash like this. And, you know, certainly hoping that a lot of these safety features did their job in protecting Tiger. We do know that he is undergoing some surgery right now for multiple injuries to his legs, but the promising news that we heard was when first responders arrived on scene, he was conscious and able to communicate with them. So that is very good news to hear. And we're hoping to get a briefing from the Sheriff's Department at 3 o'clock our time, and as soon as that happens, we'll carry it live. In the meantime, I believe we're going to go to Mario Solis, who has really covered Tiger Woods for a number of years here in L.A., and you know, I loved what Todd said from the Golf Channel. He said that Tiger really urbanized golf. I mean, golf just didn't have the kind of following. Think about before Tiger. People were watching golf tournaments like they were Super Bowl parties once Tiger came along.
Yeah, that is very true. And the way people embrace golf, the generational change that took place when Tiger became so popular was incredible. You would see an older set, a more mature sort of set of players on golf courses locally and internationally. But when Tiger became so popular, everyone wanted to be like Tiger. It was like the old commercial, everyone wants to be like Mike. Well, everyone wanted to be like Tiger Woods, and everyone adopted golf, whether it was just sort of going out for 9 quick holes or playing 18. Everything just became different. Even the attire, the way people thought about golf, watching golf on TV. Prior to that, the viewership, didn't even compare. So after Tiger took over, his dominance and his influence was so spectacular that, yeah, you're right, Colleen, everything completely changed.
His dominance, his influence, and then, Mario, we watched this incredible comeback of a few years ago that a lot of people just thought, oh, he probably won't ever win a major again. Well, some thought, but Tiger certainly had it in him and proved the doubters wrong.
As he's done so many times before, yeah. Tiger, it's been said before, never count him out. He's a fighter. He's a survivor. No matter how many shots behind the leader Tiger has been in so many tournaments. How many times have we not seen, here comes Tiger storming back and doing it once again? That's just the way he is. And of course, as you would expect, reaction from the sports community and golf in particular has been overwhelming. We talked earlier about Chicago Bulls and former UCLA star Zach LaVine tweeting, praying for Tiger. We have already gone through so much in 2020. Also, Lindsey Vonn, his former girlfriend, sending her best wishes. And we do have a soundbite from golfer Justin Thomas. During a press conference at the Workday Championship, truly heartbroken and having to hold back some tears. Here he is.
Let me check with my pilot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sick to my stomach.
Do we have enough?
It hurts to see one of your, now my closest friends, get in an accident. And man, I just hope he's all right. Just worry for his kids. I'm sure they're struggling.
His kids. Fortunately, we've heard encouraging news. Also, golfer Justin Rose saying that he had just seen the news and hoping the best for Tiger Woods. So the entire sports world, the golf community, waiting and hoping that Tiger Woods makes one more remarkable comeback.
Carolyn and Mario, when you talk about his kids, that's the one picture that stays with you of him playing golf with his young son. And he almost took more delight. It was sort of that mentorship that we remember seeing with Tiger and his dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier, that incredible tournament where Tiger and 11-year-old son Charlie
there he is, right there.
played together. It was so fun to watch, and you're right, Colleen. It was almost as if Tiger was a kid once again, and he was having more fun than his son. Charlie seemed to be the adult, very focused, very concentrated on the match. When he made some good shots, he would just sort of take it in, whereas Tiger would laugh and smile. It was truly beautiful to watch that.
He's got the old Tiger game face, doesn't he?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly what he's got. I mean, it's just, those are the images I think that so many of us are thinking about right now. And we've pointed out that on Tiger's Twitter feed, he lists himself as a father first, then a golfer and an entrepreneur. I mean, his family means so much, and it's just been so nice to be able to see this relationship that he's sharing with us, because of course, he's been very private about his children, understandably, but for him to put this out there, it was really a lot of fun for everyone to see.
It was. All right, Mario, we're going to let you step away for a couple of minutes as you get more information from your sources in the sports world. I believe we're going to go back to Nurse Alice right now to perhaps, Nurse Alice, you can shed a little light on what you know so far. We talked about the back surgeries that he's had. He's had several of them. He was, in fact, recovering from one back surgery. What do you know about the leg injuries right now? Is he out of surgery?
Well, I don't have that information as far as whether he's out of surgery, what the status is of his leg injuries. What I can tell viewers is when someone has a rollover car accident like this and they're taken to the hospital, there is a very meticulous assessment done. So although there may be some obvious injuries and some bleeding and bruising to one particular area, doctors and surgeons are and nurses are very meticulous about looking at every body system and every organ, because while you may see some broken bones, which look like some obvious injuries, injuries and we can do x-rays. Some of the things that do concern us that are hidden could be the swelling, internal bleeding, and other bruises, things that are going on with the lungs. So there's a lot that's going on as far as assessment-wise to make sure that there aren't any other injuries. So while we do know he's in surgery for his legs, I'm sure that the surgeons and the doctors and nurses there are being very meticulous at watching to check for any secondary injuries that could happen. So for example, with rollover injuries like this, we get concerned about, head injuries, traumatic brain injuries. As many rollovers as that happens, the brain can rattle in the head, and we may not see something right away, but in the subsequent hours, we may start to see some swelling or some bleeding that happens. So while even when he comes out of surgery, I'm pretty sure there's going to be some, he's going to be in the ICU being monitored very closely for any other potential injuries that could happen later.
And Nurse Alice, you mentioned that he was taken to Harbor UCLA Medical Center. That is a trauma center, so he is really in the best place he can possibly be for treatment.
Absolutely. There are various levels of trauma centers, and Harbor UCLA is a level 1 trauma center. So they have surgeons and doctors and nurses of different specialties that can respond at the drop of a dime in the event of something like this. And they need to take someone to surgery right away. They have all the specialists ready to go on hand. So I trust that he's gone to an excellent place for services. I'm sure they have the best of the doctors working with him. And again, it's going to be kind of a wait and see, because while they may be if they're saying he's in surgery for his legs, there may be some broken legs, which I'll be honest, but the look of this picture, it's not questionable. I mean, you can see the extensive damage to the vehicle. It was mentioned that airbags were deployed, and while airbags are there to protect us, they can still cause some bruising and contusions and other things like that. But I'm pretty sure that they're monitoring and looking for other things as well. Usually, and I've been in the trauma bay, I've worked trauma, ICU, ER trained, and I've seen the action that happens. And I have to tell you, in the trauma bay, there can be sometimes as many as up to 15, 20 people. Everyone has their designated role, but it's like an orchestra. Everyone has their role. They're checking everybody's system. They're documenting things. They're getting medications rolling. I'm sure one of the things here is, although Tiger was awake and talking to the first responders, once they got him to the trauma center, the first thing is, let's assess the injuries. Let's take care of those life-threatening, if any. Once they've ruled that out, let's keep them comfortable, and let's get going on the road to recovery. And that began with surgery, as I mentioned today. But even after he comes out of surgery, Tiger will have quite a road ahead of him as he then starts the process to rehabilitating, getting better, recovering, and rehabilitating. Because just by looking at his vehicle, and I'm not there, and I'm not a part of his healthcare team, but just in my experience working in the trauma bay, working with physicians and seeing people come in, it can be, sometimes the most subtle injuries can be the most devastating, and sometimes devastating injuries, it's a broken bone, then they heal and they get better. So no 2 car accidents are ever the same.
Hello, it's Cindy from the National Update. So as you know, Tiger Woods was involved in a crash near Los Angeles. No one else was hurt besides him. He was the only documented in the car. His status is unknown right now. He is going to leg surgery as he was injured in many parts of his leg. Investigators are trying to figure out what's going on, and at 5 o'clock there will be an update on him. The stream will be ending soon due to President Biden's new appearance. That will not be streaming since we do not have a streaming key set up yet, but we will try to do what we can. Thanks for joining in our live stream, and the stream will be ending.